Today is the 26th day of February 2014. In our continuing series, Interviews with Disciples and Devotees. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you an old friend who is one of the pillars of the Om Choir, Mirajyoti. Welcome, Mirajyoti. So nice to have you with us. We always begin with asking people how they first heard of Mother Sri Aurobindo. Could we begin there?
Yes.
And tell us your history?
I first heard about Mother and Sri Aurobindo in 1969, following a crisis in my life. And I knew that they were what I had been looking for all my life.
How did you read about them, or heard about them, or met someone who knew about Mother and Sri Aurobindo?
No, not really. I was living in Paris, and I had been an ardent Catholic, and my Catholicism just dwindled away. And there I was seeking, trying to understand something. But in '69, I had an ear problem. And I was undergoing the electronic treatment of Dr. Tomatis. He's very famous.
Oh, yes, I know of
And
Tomatis.
naturally, he was seeing his patients. And one day I come before him. He looks at me. He says, "You have a formidable ego. You should sign a blank check to God."
Oh.
I said, yes. 3 months later, I came across for the first time about Mother and Sri Aurobindo.
Do you remember the book?
No, it was not a book. My memory is not very good. It's too far away, but I knew. I think it was through, I can't remember now. It's too far away.
And when did you first come to the ashram?
I came to the ashram as soon as I could get a leave. I had a new job, which was in a youth exchange between France and the province of Quebec in Canada. And it was, I had the cultural section, so I could not be free until the end of the year. I had been hired in '68 when it opened, and finally I could
Get leave?
No, I could not leave.
Oh.
I could not leave until '73. And I came the first time to the ashram on 17 December '73. I did not know Mother had passed away, but I'll never forget. I came to the Samadhi, and she was everywhere. There are no words for this. I knew it was her. She was everywhere. And I knew also that I had found what I was seeking for a very long time. So after that, I went back to France, and I quit my job and came 9 October '74 back to the ashram and I stayed until September '78, most of the time in the ashram. I was just 4 months in Oroville. And then I had to go out to make money. So I went to the States, but there are centers in the States. So. And every 2-3 years I came back to the ashram until finally I could get a pension, and I came back in 1989. And since then I have not left. I was in the ashram until 2001, but I didn't choose to leave the ashram. I was going to the Matrimondia every Sunday with friends, and Matrimondia started calling me. It was so clear. And I said, what is that? I have my communion with Matrimondia every Sunday. Why should I go and live in Oroville? And it became so strong. Then after, I asked Mother after August Darshan in 2000, Mother, where do you want me? And the answer came, the answer came, it was very clear. The call is firmly planted in the consciousness. And I was panicked. I said to Mother, I'm going to be thrown to the wolves. You know, Oroville was difficult that time.
Yes,
but
it was.
I said yes. And from the moment I said yes, everything came to me. The only thing I had to do, it was in 2000, to go to the entry group, who said, yes, we put you newcomer in 2001. And then everything came. I didn't ask for anything. The work came, the housing came, everything came.
The world is looking at you. So we want you to look at the world,
Okay.
which is Arvind and the camera.
Okay, okay.
So now I know that you've done a tremendous amount of work, and one of those that I have appreciated the most, is the concordance.
Oh yes, that
Can you
was
tell
the
us
first
about the
thing.
concordance?
The concordance was published in 1984. And at that time I was still married. My husband was still in the yoga. And we decided that we should do something for people who are very mental. So we started this, and it was amazing. All the texts came, one after the other. And so after these experiences, when people ask me, what should I do or for work, I said, look, it's very simple. You ask Mother, you put your handkerchief on it, that is, you wait, and you don't continue, you don't go in your mind asking what is it going to be and all this, and you will see that everything comes. And when I came back in 1989, I had told Mother in my heart, Mother, I will do anything you want me to do, even to clean the toilets of the ashram. Please give me a sign. And I was resting and going to the samadhi every morning. After a week, I was coming by near Golconde, and a German ashramite whom I knew came out. She didn't say hello to me. She just said, you want to work? I have work for you. And she gave me the proofreading of the Book of Flowers in English and French. And then I came to the archives of the ashram, and Bob, who was going to be my supervisor, said, you know, there are 4 books of the Mother, the collected works, which are not yet in French. Would you do it in French? I was panicked. I said yes, but I rushed to the samadhi. I put my head on the marble and I said to Sherbino, please help me. And I felt coming in my consciousness 2 words, do it. From that time on, people came to the archives asking if they could help, and I had a team from 1989 to, I think, 2000. And I worked on 4 volumes of the Mother, volume 13, 14, 15, and 17, which were not yet in French. And then compilations, 8 compilations, one done by Bob Sweeker and Peter Heath, and 7 done by Dr. Dalal. And then I thought everything is all right, but Matrimandia was calling. So finally, I joined Oroville in 2001. But it was amazing, because I didn't look for a place. I got the place. I didn't look forward. They said, you come and work with me. And that's what I'm still doing, editing.
What were you doing initially in Oroville? What was the work?
When I came, in the 70s, I stayed only 4 months. I don't remember what I was doing now, it's too far away.
No, but what were you doing when you came to Oroville? You said editing, but editing what?
Came to Oroville in 2001. What was I doing? Yes, I first worked at the Laboratory of Evolution. And then that was just a few months. And then I met Shraddhavan on the road, who says to me, that was in November, I need somebody for the reading room of Savitri Bhavan. And she said, you also take care of buying new books. And I worked there 8 years. And after 8 years, she decided to put someone else. And I was quite pleased because I wanted to change. And on the beginning, I remembered that with Aurelio from Verité, we had started a compilation on music. What Cherubino and the Mother said about music, and also other people. And we worked on this, and it made 2 big folders like this, but which could not be printed because of copyright problems. But there are still there are 2 copies, and anybody who wants to look at them can do. And then what happened afterwards? I always put the past behind, so
Wonderful.
I have to remember. Let's see.
Well, you told us that you did the concordance, but many people may not know what it was.
What it was, it's called the Hierarchy of Minds, and I did it with my former husband, my second husband, who was what is called a computer nerd. That is, he was, you see, when the NASA sent the first satellite to Mars, he was in the ground team working on the computers. So when he came to the ashram, the first thing he did was to go and teach computer science at Knowledge. But then I said, well, it would be nice if we did that. He had more or less started because he was very interested in what Cherubino had to say about the mind. He was very much in the mind, not only in the mind, but very much in it. So we did this together, it has our name. And I said to him, and I said this to the archives which published the book, I said, it's so austere. Who is going to read that? In 2007, I was told that there had been 5 reprints. Did I want to add something or change something? And I think I added a few texts.
But what book was this?
The compilation on the mind, it was called The Hierarchy of Minds, and it was what mostly Sherabindo, but also Mother, have said about the mind, how the mind functions.
But the concordance was something different.
The concordance, I think I did
It
with
was
my
Savitri, wasn't it?
It was Savitri. I think I did this with my former husband, but it's so far away I don't remember now.
Well, I used it extensively.
Really?
Yes.
Wonderful.
It was an alphabetical listing of all the words in
Oh,
Savitri,
yes, I remember now.
with each page and line given. So at that time you could look up the word and you would see it. It would be on this page and this line.
Yes, I completely forgot. I think I have it somewhere at home, but it's too far
It was
away.
before we had computers that could
Yeah.
search Savitri as we have now.
Yeah,
We had to use the concordance.
yeah. This I remember now that people used it. I did not use it.
We always like to ask if you had any special remembrances of the elder sadhaks in the ashram that you knew or worked with.
But there was Jantilal at the archives, and some of them are still alive. Bob Sweeker, Peter Heath, but not so much. With whom did I work?
Did you know Nolini, or did you know
I think I
Pavitra?
met him once. Pavitra, no. No. But I knew about them. And who else?
Mona, you must have known in Golconda.
Yes, but just like that, because I didn't live in Golconda. And no, the one whom I really knew well was the one who was directing the archives, who was Norman Dasset. And Norman Dasset was British. He has a very interesting story. Maybe I can tell this.
Please.
He was navigator in the British Army during the World War. And he was an occultist. In 1942, they were based in the Bay of Bengal, watching all the movements of the Japanese, who were massing the troops in Bangladesh to invade India. And then there was kind of a lull, and the officer in charge of the base said to his people, look, you have 8 days, a week of leave, and you can go where you want. And Norman Dasset was so interested in occultism that he had heard about the Pondicherry, that the food was very good. It was French at that time. And he went to the Hotel de l'Europe, and then he asked the manager, do you know where I could get some books? I'm interested in the subject. He said, well, you can go to the ashram library. So, but he said, you know, we have the mother, and you can ask for an interview of the mother. So he rushed to the reception. He gets the first interview, and mother received him. You know, this place, there is a chair of the mother just before this room where we stay as we are going to go inside Sherabindo's room. And mother smiled very sweetly, and I don't know, they talked about a few things. And Norman Dasset buys the books, all the books he could find that were sold in the ashram. He comes back to the Hotel de l'Europe, absolutely furious, throw, because he expected Mother, I don't know, to be what she was not, I mean, brilliant or whatever it was. And Mother was just very nice with him. So he had bought all the books. He throws all the books on the bed. One book opens and he reads, "Do not judge the divine by appearances." So the next morning he rushes back, gets another interview of Mother, who smiles at him and says, "Yes, I know." And he fell at her feet. And then every time he had a leave, he would come to the ashram. He came for the darshans. And then he's going to be demobilized. In 1945, he comes to see Mother. And he says, "Mother, I'm going back to London to be demobilized. It's going to take some time." And also he had to arrange for his wife and 2 children, his wife was Scottish, to come by boat. And Mother smiles at him and says, "You will be back in 1 week." And he says, "But Mother, it's not so easy." He takes an army plane, he's back in London. He meets a friend of his who says, "You know, the Parliament has just passed a law. You can be demobilized immediately and join your family." And a week later, Norman Dasset was back. And Mother put him in the school to teach in the school. And then later on, he started a center. And this is where I met him. But it was with society. Mm-hmm. And so he helped me start my sadhana. And that was when was it? The dates. Yes, this was in 75. And 3 years later, I ran out of money. So I had to leave. And I went to the States, married a friend, because I had to marry in order to enter the country at that time. And the friend I married was in our group, but he was 17 years younger than I was, but just the same. We stayed there, made money, and we were back in 1989. But in the meantime, we had come several times, and Norman Dasset passed away in 1984. And in 89, we came back, and I have not left since. My former husband, because we're divorced, went back in 1994, asked for divorce. We said, okay, no problem. And but it's a bit sad because I heard from common friends in the States that he doesn't want to hear about the ashram, about Shirobendo, about anything. And he was in Houston when there was the big tsunami. But he survived. He married twice after me. I think he has a child now.
Do you remember Lena Dowsett?
Yes, a little bit, because after Norman passed away, she was in the nursing home, and I used to go and see her until she passed away.
You remember when she used to distribute the soup?
Yes, but I didn't go very often. But I remember at least once, yeah.
Let's fast forward to Oroville.
Yeah.
And tell us some of your experiences in the early years of Oroville when you were there. As much positive as you can.
No, I don't have, you see, how should I put it? If there is one thing I've learned, is to look at everything in a positive way. If there is a shadow, okay, there is the shadow. And last year when I had my birthday in October, I turned 84. And I had quite a surprise because I had something that looked like a vision. I saw a road from the time I had come to know about Mother and Sherabindo and the Sadhana, and the road was just going up like this until now. It was very simple. And I understood everything. Yes, I was meant to be here. No doubt. But the early days were difficult. First, I had to get out of my Catholicism, which was quite strong, and there were fears. You know, when you're an ardent Catholic, you're afraid of hell, you're afraid of sin. And I must say now that sin has no meaning for me anymore. And also, because I had to divorce, I was excommunicated.
Ah, yes.
And normally, since I was fervent Catholic, I couldn't partake of the host anymore. It was forbidden.
Yes.
But I didn't really care. And there was something in me that was saying, you know, I found the word in the explanation, the Veda, neti, neti. It wasn't that, it wasn't that. And finally, when I came the first time in 1973, and that I will never forget, came out of the plane, and I had been sent a car, and I felt, I've come home, I've come home, I've come home. It was wonderful, wonderful. So I didn't meet Mother, but when I was in Paris, a long time back, I lived in a street next to the street where Mother had lived. And I went to the same park where she had gone. At the time, you know, she was living in Paris and she had her group. And, well.
And you must have visited the small house where she stayed.
I didn't visit, but I saw it.
You saw it.
I saw it, I saw the garden. But, yeah, I think it's very simple, finally. It takes the time it takes. But if we are meant to come here, we come here, no matter what happened. And my parents were very unhappy first because at the age of 10 I had converted to Catholicism. And my mother, being Jewish, she took this as I don't know. The only thing I remember is when we migrated to Montreal, I was 15. Before taking the ship, my mother said, I have something to tell you. I'm Jewish. And she was very pretty. She had big eyes. And I said, my poor mommy, you must have suffered so much because her whole family was exterminated by the Nazis in the Warsaw Ghetto. And she opened big eyes. She said, that's all you have to say? I said, what did you think I was going to say? Oh, she always told me that the Jews crucified Christ. I said, this is history. And what a relief it was. And I read when I came to Montreal, where there was a very big Jewish community, I started reading because all the books were coming out about what had happened. And we can't imagine. I still wonder why there was this thing and these people who had sort of, in quote, a curse, you know. But that was what it was. But I was in a very good university when I was in Montreal. I had no schooling because during the war, my father was in the French civil service, and I was raised in Cambodia and Vietnam. And because we had the Japanese occupation, I couldn't go to school. So I didn't go to school until it was what is the beginning of the time when you can go to university in Montreal. And so then I started normal schooling, but I had to, it was in English. I was in a university which I heard has become very prestigious now, McGill. And now McGill has 10,000 students. At the time there were only 4,000. So it was, but I...
Can you tell us a bit about Savitri Bhavan, your remembrances of the people there?
Well, I knew Shraddha Fan already before I came to Oroville. And when I came to Oroville, she met me on the road and she said, "Can you come and take care of the reading room?" And it was quite nice. I enjoyed it. I worked there for 8 years. Shraddha Fan was very busy building up Savitri Bhavan. And I was just working there. And
what did you do after you left Savitri Bhavan? What are you doing now?
Oh, what I'm doing now, I made addition up to here. The last thing. Well, first I had this compilation on music. And after that, what did I do? Well, I have a very bad memory. The past is the past.
I would beg to differ. I don't remember dates like you remember dates.
Well, there are very few dates I remember.
How is Oroville today compared to '89?
Well, of course, there are more people. We are now 28 nationalities. It's very slow building up, and I think it is a very good thing. But it is not easy. I didn't find it very difficult because I had been in the ashram, so I had a kind of, I was used to discipline myself and all that. But people who came, there is definitely a call from the mother. And, mother said two things, because now I work with visitors, German visitors, because I have a very good German friend. And I open a parenthesis. It's interesting that my best friends in Oroville are Germans, and my whole family on my mother's side was killed by the Germans. So it's very beautiful. So my German friend said, "I would like you to meet my German groups when they are at the time of evaluation of their stay. And also they will see an Orovillian's place." And so I received them, and I say, "Look, I'm not making a speech, you ask questions." And that becomes very interesting, because, of course, the first question they ask how you came to Oroville, but after that, there are other things, and it's interesting. You see, people may think that we proselytize. We don't. But we give a chance to people to understand what Oroville is about. They usually have one day on the integral yoga. And that's where I participate at the end, because my friend said, the theme of your talk, well, it's not quite a talk, but the theme of your talk is what is it living the integral yoga? And I said, "Look, I'm not going to make a speech, you ask questions." And that's where it becomes interesting, because you can sort of put in a few things. one of the things I tell them, Mother said Orville is the hope of the future. So, and also, Orville will be done even if it takes 1,000 years. But I say, I don't think it will take 1,000 years. And that sort of starts the questions. And then at one point I said, well, because they ask, how do you practice your yoga? They ask about sadhana and so on. And I said, look, when I came to the ashram, and I was in this research group, it was with Norman Dassett, he told me, you know, there are 4 questions in life. The first one, who am I? The second one, what am I on earth for? The third one, what do I want? And the fourth one, how much do I want it? Well, it looks simple, but actually it has many levels. And so I use this as sort of, because for many of them it's the first time, so I ask them, how did you hear about Orville and all that? But now there have been many people who've come to Orville. So I heard, even in India, people traveling in India, and suddenly they meet someone who says, do you know about the ashram in Orville? And people come. So that's how Mother works, you see. And actually, I find that in a way, well, once we say, Mother, you do everything, everything happens, just happens. In the beginning, I was very much in the mental. I thought I should say this, I should do this, but now it's just flowing. But I have 38 years of sadhana, so it's beginning. And at the same time, I feel I know nothing. Nothing.
I agree.
Because well, but of course the big blessing was to work on French editions of the works of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. There were 4 books of the Mother who were not yet in French in the collection, and then 7 compilations of Dalal and 1 of...
So these were Dalal's compilations that you translated into French?
Well, what I had, I had to find, because some of the quotations of Sri Aurobindo were not in French. So I had, but I was panicked when I was given this work. I went to the ashram, put my head on the marble, and said to Sri Aurobindo, please help me. Well, that time I didn't realize how things work, but there were always people coming to the archives to ask for work, and the director would send them to me. That's how it happened. So that was quite a lesson, never to worry. So now I'm over here. In addition, I'm editing the talks of Ananda Reddy.
Ah.
And that's beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful work. It's slow because, there's a difference between spoken language and
Written.
not academic, but written language.
Yes.
And but one thing, and that I always tell my friends, and they said, but you didn't meet Mother. I said, no, but when I came to the ashram, I already knew about Mother. And I said to Mother, I will do any work you want me to do.
Yes.
And whatever I did, I had help. I didn't even ask for help. That was quite a lesson for me because I was very much in the mind, how things are going to work out. So
I'd like to ask you just
yeah.
to share a few of your thoughts on the Om Choir.
Well, the Om Choir, been in the Om Choir ever since it started, 2007. And I was in one of the best choirs in Paris.
You mentioned that to
Yeah.
me, yes.
And I had no idea what the Om Choir was. But the fact that I was in the choir helped me to discipline myself. So if I was going to, I had to go along with the people. But it's such a blessing. I'm so grateful, you know. It's very beautiful, very beautiful. And I look forward to the program. But the program is going to be classical music.
Classical music, yes.
Yeah. And I was in a choir in Paris where we sang, for instance, the great works of Bach, the Christmas Oratorio, the Passions, and also modern works, the Ode to Joy of Beethoven, and things like that. So that, but the Om Choir is very different. But you know, sometimes I don't know what I'm going to sing. I just feel, okay, I'll just let them start and I'll pitch in. It's such a different experience, but I feel very much the presence. Presence is there. And I think we have ideas about what music should be, what the voice should be, and if we just go along, everything happens. So.
Well, thank you so much, Mirajyoti. It's been
Well, I
wonderful.
hope it's going to be
Actually, the time has flown by.
I'm talkative also. But, you know, I'm so grateful because I was thinking of what I might say. And I realized what a blessing that Mother calls us here. In whatever, whether it is Auroville or the ashram, or whatever we do, she has not left. She's here. In fact, when I came to the ashram the first time, it was 1 month after she had left her body, and I told my friend, but she's everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It was, I never had an experience like this. So,
It was wonderful.
well, I just told what I have lived and felt. Cannot say anything else. It was like that, it happened. I didn't have major experiences, but something very steady, the Mother's presence.
Very steady.
Yeah, you know, I had quite a few years ago, a newcomer came to my place in Auroville, and he comes in my flat, and to my great surprise, he says, "Mother is here." But I said, "Mother is everywhere." It was... But, well...
You had a former name, and you received a new name.
Yes.
Can you tell us that story?
Okay. My name was, you see, I was an accident in my mother's life. I was supposed to be a boy. My mother was a violinist, and she admired a violinist at that time called Yves Nat. Now, Yves is has an etymology which comes from the Ivo tree in Brittany, and it's the tree of grief. So my mother was expecting me, and she thought I was going to be a boy. And I turned out to be a girl. And my mother was Russian. She didn't know much about French names. So she said, okay, we're going to call her Eve because it's the name for a boy. We'll call her Yvonne. But Eve has an etymology. It comes from the ivo tree, Celtic name ivo tree, which is the tree of grief. And when I found this out, and I came to the ashram, I asked Mother, please, I need another name. Yeah, well, you see, my mother didn't expect me. And when she went to the doctor, he said, my dear girl, you're 3 months, you're not only pregnant, but you're 3 months pregnant. And my mother was going to give her first professional performance. She was a violinist in Paris, and all this became out of question. Yvonne is the etymology of Yvonne, which is my birth name, is the ivo tree, and it's the tree of grief. So when I found this Celtic name, ivo tree, and when I found this out, and I came here, I thought I must change that. And so I asked Mother for a name. And I had a dream. I was going up a golden staircase. That was long before there was holding a crystal. But the crystal in Orville was not there yet. I was just going up with this crystal. So I told my friend the next day, I said, Norman, I said, my name is Light. So he looked for the Sanskrit name, and it was Jyoti. But when I came to Orville, there were 4 Jyotis. So I said to Mother in my heart, Mother, please add something to Jyoti. And what came was Mira. I said, Mother, what are they going to say? How dare you put the mother's name to your name? But it came back so strong, Mira. I said, okay, Mother, I accept. For 8 years, not a single time did anybody mention this name. And one day, out of the blue, there was a visitor in my place, and he turns to me with a smile. He said, Mirajyoti, what a beautiful name. And now it is on my passport, also known as Mirajyoti.
Beautiful story.
So this was quite a lesson to me, how we get those ideas in the head. This should be like this should be like that. But Mother has her own idea, and it just happens.
Thank you.
Oh.